And in a nutshell, there are two things that are mentioned regarding the purpose of life. One is that God created us to receive His mercy. That is specifically mentioned in Surah 11, verse 119, where it says, إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبُّكَ, except he on whom God's mercy falls. وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُمْ, and it is for that reason that He created them. So God created people for His mercy. That's one purpose mentioned there. Elsewhere in the Quran, it is mentioned that God created us to worship Him. مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We have not created jinn and human being except that they should worship me. So God created human beings to receive His mercy and also to worship God. How do we put the two together? It seems that in order to receive the mercy of God, we should worship God. That would be the avenue through which we receive the mercy of God. Why would God create human beings to receive His mercy? The Jewish philosopher Moses Maimonides, or Musa bin Maimun as he's known in the Arab world, in his book Hidayat al-Hayara, or Guide to the Perplexed, said that God's mercy is like an overflowing fountain. There is so much of it that is flowing over all of the sides. So God, having this overwhelming amount of mercy, created creatures, us, to receive that mercy. And in the Quran, in Surah 7, in verse 159, God says that He created human beings and that He is going to give His mercy to those who believe in Him and perform the prayer and give the charity and so on. So when we perform acts of worship, we are actually connecting with God to receive that mercy. If you think of a simple illustration of an old house with a water tank outside and with the pipes leading from the water tank into your kitchen sink. Whenever you want water, you turn on the tap and you get the water that's coming from the tank. So it's coming from the source, and you have a way of connecting with that source to get the water that you need. In a similar way, the mercy comes from God, and for us to receive that mercy, there has to be some connection. And the way we connect with God is by the acts of worship. But the acts of worship in the Islamic faith, in fact, are widely defined to include not only the so-called pure acts of worship, but also almost everything that we do with the good intention of serving God, provided that the actions themselves are of a good sort. So let's illustrate that a little bit further by looking first of all at the 5 pillars. Anyone who has taken a course on Islam, just an introductory course, Islam 101, will have become aware that there are 5 pillars in the Islamic faith. I'm trying to add a new slide here, a blank one, but I don't seem to find a way to do that. So, though I've done this 100 times before, but anyway. So, how do we explain the 5 pillars of Islam? This is one of the things you'll find in an introductory course, that Islam is built on 5 pillars. Let me erase some of this so I have room here to write my 5 pillars. So what are the 5 pillars of Islam? If you can just shout them out. 1, prayer. Well, actually, no, Shahada, yes. You almost got me there, right? Can't be right again. So the Shahada. 2 is the prayer, and 3, zakat usually, which means charity, and 4, Hajj might be listed. Now the order is not so important, and then 5, fasting. Now, one of the striking features of the Islamic faith is that its practices are actually practical and quite reasonable, and they fulfill a certain purpose. When Muslims do these things, they don't really think so much of the purpose behind them, but we should, because only by thinking of the purposes behind the actions that we do could we really fulfill them in their true spirit. Think of the Shahada, for example. What does the Shahada do? A person may already believe that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. But Shahada implies a public, an outward proclamation of that faith. Otherwise, the person may be Muslim at heart, and that's between the person and God, that this person is really a Muslim. But by proclaiming the faith to the community, one immediately joins the community. He becomes such a part of the community that others have an obligation to help him or her, and likewise he or she would have an obligation to help the community. So Shahada becomes now immediately a community matter. 2, the prayer. Muslims are required to pray 5 times a day throughout a day and a night, and the prayers are so separated in time that it allows you to have a balanced life. It puts order and harmony and a sense of purpose in your life. One goes through a day-to-day routine of working or studying, having relations with one's family, spending quality time with others, and so on. But then, how does one balance one's spirituality with that? That the prayer does that. And it allows you to carry on with everything else. Everyone has got free time. We've all got 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week. So what do you do with all of that time? So you study maybe for 5 hours in a day. You take some time for transportation and for your meals and so on, and for interaction and some recreation. What do you do with the rest of the time? Okay, I know you sleep for 8 hours. I have to factor that in as well. But so we all have time to do something else. And if people just simply carry on in an unguided manner, they will find that they have lived day in and day out. And if they look back over their lives over time and they ask themselves, well, what have I really accomplished? What's so special about me? What's different about human beings? Why are human beings not just simply some other sorts of animals? We share 97% of our genes with chimpanzees. Why are human beings so different? So worshiping God, and especially in the prayer, is something that actually sets us apart. It makes us have this sense that we are accomplishing something also on the spiritual side. Not only are we developing materially and financially, but we're also developing spiritually. Now, if one thinks of the 5 daily prayers, each prayer has a certain time frame within which it is to be offered. So the morning prayer might be offered, let's say, anywhere from 5 to about 6:30, approximately. Varies from day to day, depending on the season. So you have a range of time, say an hour and a half, within which to offer that prayer. Some people are early risers, some people rise a little bit later. So you have the option there, within that time frame, to offer the prayer. Somebody may be working a night shift and they would have a break somewhere in between. So whenever the break falls, it falls within that range. You can offer a prayer during that break. The prayers, in fact, we should add, take only a few minutes, really. There are some obligatory portions in the prayer and some optional portions. The obligatory portions, we can think of them as cycles. A cycle of prayer involves standing, bowing, prostrating, and finally sitting. In each one of these various postures, a person recites some glorification and praises of God. One cycle takes just about a minute, on average. Someone can rush it and do it a bit quicker, which I don't like. I feel like this is, you're really stealing time from God here. You're not giving quality time to God. And then you can make it longer than that if somebody really enjoys it and wants to do it longer, especially you want to recite a little bit more, a longer portion of the Quran that you've memorized. So this is all possible. But in a normal state of affairs, one would say 1 minute per rak'ah or cycle. You think that's reasonable? Well, I mean, those who are praying, what do you think? 1 minute per cycle? Seems reasonable? That's about what we spend.